This is the evil ankle-breaking assassin Begode A2. That's right, I got a hands-on, or should I say feet, on the ankle-breaking assassin A2 that cut out right shortly after it was unboxed. Before I rode this wheel, I was very hesitant to offer my stamp of approval. But after riding it, something changed. Let's talk about it. This is Wheel Good Time. Let's go. The Begode A2 is an EUC that's small and compact, and marketed as something aimed more at beginners. It has an 84-volt system and 750 watt-hour battery, 1,000-watt water-resistant motor, no suspension, with built-in pads and waterproofing throughout. I initially published a video recommending people avoid this EUC because of two separate incidents with this wheel. One was when the main board fried, and another incident where it was practically brand new and cut out on Marty completely randomly, causing a broken ankle and months of recovery time. I'm going to cover the safety concerns on this wheel first, then dive deep into the full review. To start, let's discuss the infamous cutout with Roger, the current owner of the Assassin A2.
So we have the infamous Assassin here.
It's an A2. Begode, yes.
But it tried to murder Marty.
Or Marty decided to just bow down to its awesome power. But yeah, the story goes, he got on it. He loved it for about 2 blocks, and then it turned off on him. And these little wheels, especially like the smaller ones in this, you could feel if you get weird on them, they're so twisty and like the casters on a shopping cart. And I think it just spun around and broke his ankle.
Tell me about your troubleshooting process for this.
Okay. So Marty posted that he broke his ankle, that the wheel turned off, and everybody wanted to know what happened. I told Marty, I will look into it. I expected to find, because the M10-4s had this, they were kind of notorious for having the battery unplugged from the main board. So that was the first thing I was gonna look at. I popped the top off of it. I looked, that was plugged in totally fine and secure. So I was a little at a loss as to what it could have been. So I decided to delve deeper, removed the main board, checked it out, all the parts that I was concerned about with a microscope, grabbed the battery, pulled it out, unwrapped it, checked everything I could check with the battery. Everything seemed perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I put it all back together and kept testing it. And then it was about 2 weeks later, I think, Marty sent me a message from the Begode factory or whoever up there. And they were saying, we believe we have diagnosed the issue. There is a diode that may be faulty on the BMS of the battery.
Okay.
So Marty told me this. He sent me the info, the pictures from them, and they said how to troubleshoot it. I think their guess was nobody would bother troubleshooting it. I looked at Marty and I said, I'm going to remove that diode and ride the wheel because that's not the problem. So took the thing apart, back down to the BMS, and I desoldered the diode and stuck it on the table, put the wheel back together, and I never put the diode back. So it's because I lost the diode. It was really little, but apparently it wasn't that important. So
so would we chalk up the failure of this one A2? Because this isn't a common thing. I haven't heard of it happening at all.
I haven't heard it anybody else anywhere.
Would we call it like a just cosmic joke or maybe user error then for this sort of thing?
Yeah, it's that worm with the little mouth with the teeth. It's a fluke.
Okay, cool. Well, as far as the A2 in general is concerned, who would you recommend it for? What kind of user?
So you can use this the same as they do the M10-4, like it goes in your trunk, it's a last mile wheel. It's a little bit bigger than an M10-4, but it actually feels like a real full-fledged wheel. It doesn't have that toy kind of feeling where it's all kind of shuddery and shaky. People always want to teach people to ride on an M10-3 or M10-4. not a great idea. This is a great idea.
I'd agree with that. I've tried the M10-4 and it's a different ride feel completely from this. An M10-4 feels like a toy, and this feels like an EUC that you can teach even a child how to ride, because it's not that heavy.
I've seen people grab an M10-3 and hand it to a seasoned rider that knows what they are doing, and they look brand new. They look fresh off the vine.
Me too.
Yeah.
I've done it. I'm like, it's a completely new and completely different learning process.
You learn this, then you can transition 100% to one of the other ones. The M10-3s, M10-4s, the skills you gain from riding those are invaluable, but it's not a direct correlation to the full-size wheels.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
I personally am willing to accept that considering this type of incident only happened once that anyone is aware of, that it's not a critical design flaw that happens on all A2s. It's an awful occurrence for sure, but it is not proven to be widespread. Let's talk about the A2 fire. Someone in Korea posted on the internet about their A2 catching fire and it made the news. At first, Begode blamed it on the owner without providing any context. Not a good look. As it turns out, it was apparently leaned against a wall while turned on in a manner that it was constantly pushing on that wall. This is a recipe for disaster and can happen to any EUC if you aren't paying close attention. Doing this causes the motor to continue to work and strain against whatever it's leaning against, and the motherboard will heat up more and more as it's working. The A2, being completely waterproof, didn't have any airflow going across the motherboard, adding fuel to an already worsening potential situation. Finally, the motherboard gave out and blew. It's not a battery fire, which would have been exponentially worse, but it was definitely a fire nonetheless, and that's always a bad day. However, leaning your EUC pushing against a wall without monitoring its temperature is an unwise thing to do, and blowing your motherboard from doing that activity could happen to any EUC. I'm now comfortable enough marking these two separate and isolated incidents as random chance and bad days. Let it be a lesson to everyone. Always wear your safety gear to protect yourself in the case of a random cutout, and also don't lean your wheel against a wall without monitoring the temperature, because blowing your mainboard as it pushes could happen to anyone. When I first tried the Assassin Ankle Breaker A2, I was extremely impressed with its handling and in its level of power, especially for the small and light package that it comes in. This wheel is extremely fun and zippy. The maneuverability on this small EUC is exceptional, and I loved the spiked pedals that are included on this wheel. The A2 has more than enough power to get the job done if you want to ride on the sidewalk or parking lot, getting around a college campus, or taking your trash out to the end of a long driveway when walking around would just be an annoyance. I believe this EUC is the perfect beginner wheel, and a beginner will outgrow this EUC very quickly. But the low price tag on this machine makes it very accessible to a learner, and it's still a fun little wheel to zip around in, even for Roger, the fastest EUC rider in the world. What I disliked about the stock A2 was the power pads that are included. They're not ergonomic at all, and I wish they stuck out further so you could get a proper purchase on them when accelerating and braking. Sadly, in order to remove the stock pads, you have to cut them off. I also found that with the included pads, it was easy to get some slight wobbles on them, just a little bit. Chalk it up to my overall inexperience with this particular wheel, but I didn't like that. I want to put on pads that fit my body and my riding style. Begode made it impossible to simply remove these pads and put on your own. Thanks to James at Next Gen Mobility, he let me use his demo unit, which changed everything. On this demo unit, the stock pads were cut off, and then aftermarket pads were put on instead. The additional width on the aftermarket pads really made braking and accelerating extremely easy, and caused the A2 to really shine. I liked the stock A2, but I love the A2 with proper aftermarket pads installed. If you get the A2, cutting off your pads and putting on different ones is the first thing I recommend doing. It will revolutionize your A2 experience. Let's have a little walkthrough on this wheel. Pressing the power button will cause the wheel to power up. We have a little spin kill button on the top that will cause it to go back. The small but bright screen shows speed, odometer reading, riding mode, and battery state. The A2 has a daytime running light that glows blue, and when the white light is turned on, it's not as bright as the more expensive EUC's headlights, but for the speed you're traveling, it gets the job done. As we discussed already, the Ankle Breaker A2 was fitted with a street tire that made the road riding experience even smoother, but you can't go wrong with either tire. When you press the power button, it sits very neatly and nicely on the two kickstand nubs. The stock tire is knobby as well and grips the ground with no problem. The demo unit that I was using had a bit of a sticky trolley handle and required me to mess with it a bit to get it to go all the way up. Presumably there are bits of dirt or sand that got lodged in the sliding mechanism that prevented it from fully extending easily. I really dislike the fact that the trolley handle almost completely blocks the tail light on this wheel. Why even include a tail light on this wheel just to cover it up? That part of the design was just poor. It seems like an afterthought. However, the A2 trolley handle was much stronger and less floppy than the trolley handle present on all the 134 Begode EUCs, so I can't knock it too hard. Something to keep in mind about the A2 is that it has one single battery pack in a 2P configuration. Typically, the A2 is shipped with Samsung 50E batteries, so this wheel is very underpowered from that perspective. It's important to remember that this EUC is not a long-range wheel, nor is it a powerhouse like the EX30 or Master Pro. Significant voltage sag is to be expected when you punch on the acceleration, which will necessarily lower your max speed. Therefore, if you're in a cold climate, then your range will be even further reduced. Don't buy this wheel if you have unreasonable expectations. This is an absolutely incredible value learner EUC. It's a very comfortable last mile wheel. This is a fantastic kids wheel, but this is not the long-range cruiser that the Master Pro, EX30, any of those wheels are. This is a beginner wheel that is an exceptional value. Keeping this wheel's limitations in mind is critical when reviewing this electric unicycle. The Begode A2 is not without its flaws, but I personally think the flaws are forgivable. The low-end torque on the A2 is surprisingly stellar, and handling on it is second to none. And everything about it is made that much better after putting on different pads. The A2 changed my mind and my perspective. This is a really good EUC with incredible value. Make no mistake, it's not a racer, it's not a performance EUC, but it is the best last mile EUC in existence in my opinion. This is the perfect size EUC for kids to ride, but it has enough power to get adults from point A to point B as well with ease. In conclusion, with a few caveats, I highly recommend this EUC. This video would not have been made possible without Next Gen Mobility and Roger for lending me this wheel. If you're in the market for an EUC, check out the video description where I have tons of discount codes and affiliate links that help support the channel directly. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.